You step into the glittering halls of Constantinople's great palace. Gold mosaics shimmer on the walls, catching the torchlight as if saints themselves were watching you. The air is heavy with incense, sweet and suffocating, masking something far less holy. Priests chant in distant chapels, their voices echoing like ghosts. But here beneath the polished marble another sound lingers. Whispers, moans, secrets. The Byzantines called this place the jewel of Christendom, but behind its gilded walls, it pulsed with forbidden life. Emperors ruled with armies and decrees, but in truth, power was decided in bedrooms, in chambers where lust was both currency and weapon. You can almost hear the clinking of jewelry as concubines pass through hidden corridors, their beauty bought and caged. You see eunuchs, pale and deliberate, the gatekeepers of the empire's most intimate secrets. Their bodies mutilated, yet their power unmatched men who could not sire children, but who shaped the destiny of dynasties. Chroniclers dared to whisper of empresses who used seduction as a crown, of orgies disguised as banquets, of rivals humiliated through sexual rituals meant to strip them of dignity. In Byzantium, sex was never private, it was spectacle, performance, punishment. And as you stand in this palace, you feel the tension coil around you. Every shadow hides a secret. Every touch carries danger. Here, lust is a game of survival, and the price of desire is often death. This is not the history of kings and battles you are taught. This is the hidden story, the horrific sexual practices of Byzantine palace secrets. You step into a chamber lit by the faint glow of oil lamps. The air smells of frankincense, but beneath it you detect something sharper, something human sweat, perfume, and secrets. Sitting before you is not a general, not a bishop, not a noble. It is a eunuch. His face is powdered, his robes immaculate, his gestures precise, almost theatrical. Yet when he speaks, his voice is calm, steady, and commanding. And in that moment, you realize the paradox. Here, the most powerful man in the palace is one who has been stripped of manhood itself. In Byzantium, castration was not a punishment. It was an entry ticket to the corridors of influence. Emperors feared ambitious rivals who could sire children and found dynasties. But a eunuch? He could never threaten the bloodline. That absence made him safe, useful, and indispensable. Chroniclers like Liutprand of Cremona marveled at the sight of eunuchs filling the court, calling them living shadows of men, who nevertheless pulled the strings of power. You see him turn a heavy key in his hand. It is not a key to treasure, nor to an armory. It is the key to the Empress's private quarters. He alone decides who may pass, who may serve, who may approach the women hidden behind the silken curtains of the harem. Emperors trusted them as guardians, believing their mutilation made them harmless. But history whispers another truth. Do you not see? An anonymous chronicler wrote, "The empire is ruled by those who cannot rule their own flesh." For castration did not always kill desire. Sometimes it twisted it. Behind locked doors, away from priests and courtiers, eunuchs were rumored to indulge in strange rituals. Some turned to voyeurism, watching and controlling the intimacy of others. Others sought substitutes perversions of pleasure, shaped by the very thing denied them. Their mutilation gave them access to women no other man could approach. And though most records fall silent, hints of clandestine practices linger like shadows on the parchment. You glance at the eunuch's eyes. They do not tremble. They do not look away. Here is a man who cannot father children, yet he holds the fate of emperors and empresses in his hands. He whispers into royal ears, arranges marriages, silences rivals, and sometimes decides life and death. And still, a darker irony unfolds. Many emperors confessed their deepest secrets to eunuchs, believing them loyal confidants. Yet power corrupts even the powerless. Chronicles accuse certain eunuchs of controlling the flow of concubines, choosing which women would warm the imperial bed, and which would be cast aside. Desire became politics, lust became strategy, and eunuchs stood at the center of it all. You can almost hear the whispers of the palace guards as you leave the chamber. He is nothing, yet he is everything. In Byzantium, manhood was not always power. Sometimes the absence of it was stronger than any sword. And in these corridors, where shadows move faster than truth, you begin to understand power in the great palace was not born from passion, but from its mutilation. You slip past the guards, your footsteps swallowed by the velvet carpets of the palace. Ahead of you, a curtain shimmers in the candlelight, thick with embroidered gold threads. As you push through, the air changes. Perfume hangs heavy, choking sweet, clinging to your lungs until you can hardly breathe. Behind you, the world of politics and religion fades. Before you, the Empress's bedchamber. The room is not a sanctuary, but a theater. Silken curtains sway like serpents, veiling and unveiling shadows. The walls glisten with mosaics of Venus and Aphrodite, barely concealed beneath Christian symbols, a deliberate reminder that even holiness cannot tame desire. And at the center of this chamber, beauty is not decoration, it is power sharpened into a weapon. The most infamous of them all was Empress Theodora. Chroniclers like Procopius wrote of her youth in tones dripping with disgust and fascination. Before she wore the crown, she had been an actress, and not the kind who performed tragedy or epic tales. Byzantine theater blurred with spectacle, and Theodora's performances, if the sources are to be believed, were scandalous beyond measure. Procopius whispers in his secret history that she once reenacted mythic seductions on stage, her body the script, her audience inflamed. Now crowned, she transformed that scandal into authority. The very skills that once made her infamous made her untouchable. You watch her glide across the chamber in imagination, each gesture deliberate, each word dipped in honey or venom. Generals, priests, even the emperor himself bent beneath her spell. But with power came danger. Whispers drifted through the palace of lovers hidden behind walls, smuggled through secret corridors. Some were exposed, dragged into the open, disgraced, destroyed. Others vanished quietly, swallowed by the palace labyrinth. Desire here was never innocent. It was calculated, transactional, and always edged with the threat of ruin. Do you think she is weak? One courtier was said to mutter, "She binds an empire tighter than any chain by the heat of her bed." Rumors spoke of private banquets, where Theodora and her circle staged spectacles more daring than any public theater. Orgies disguised as rituals, erotic performances framed as symbolic displays of loyalty. To witness them was to be both seduced and compromised, for once you participated, you could never speak against her. Your silence was secured not by loyalty, but by shame. As you imagine the chamber filling with courtiers, dancers, and eunuchs who watched from the shadows, you feel the weight of the room pressing in. Curtains close off the exits, wine glimmers dark in the cups, and music swells its rhythm, timed to the pace of breath, the surrender of inhibition. The Empress does not merely rule by decree. She rules by desire, bending men not through fear of swords, but through pleasures they dare not admit. And yet, beneath the splendor lies danger. In Byzantium, every embrace carried risk. Lovers could be exposed, condemned, or poisoned. To share a bed with the Empress was to lie not on silk, but on a blade's edge. You glance back at the door, and it occurs to you, in this palace, power does not always sit on a throne. Sometimes it lies in bed, waiting, perfumed and deadly. Here, in the Empress's chamber, sex is not pleasure. It is war. You hear it first laughter, soft at first, like the tinkling of bells, but then louder, sharper, echoing through the gilded corridors of the great palace. You follow it until you reach a heavy door carved with patterns of vines and angels. A eunuch slides it open, and a wave of heat, perfume, and voices washes over you. Inside, the scene blinds you. Gold drapes hang from the walls, candles flicker against mosaics, and the air is thick with incense and wine. Women move across the marble floor like shadows of flame, their bodies wrapped in silk so sheer they conceal nothing. Jewels dangle from their wrists and throats, glittering against skin that comes from every corner of the empire. This is the emperor's harem, hidden from the public eye, but as real as the throne itself. Chroniclers like Psellos wrote that Byzantine emperors collected not only treasures, but women, imported like rare spices from Armenia, Persia, and the Slavic lands. Each one chosen for beauty, each one broken into obedience. To rule an empire, an emperor first had to display mastery here in the bedchamber, where pleasure doubled as proof of dominion. You watch as the women begin to dance. The music swells, tambourines clashing, flutes shrieking. Their movements are not for joy. They are for command. Some smile through the performance, others keep their eyes lowered. To refuse was not an option. A harem slave existed to please, to seduce, to entertain, even when humiliation was part of the performance. The feast grows louder. Cups overflow with dark red wine, spilling onto the marble, staining it like blood. Courtiers laugh, their mouths open with drunken desire. And then, slowly, the spectacle shifts. The dances grow more fevered, more intimate, until what begins as performance dissolves into something darker. Chroniclers dared to call these nights banquets, but beneath the euphemism lay the truth. They were orgiastic feasts, rituals of submission where the emperor paraded his wealth and his power not through armies, but through flesh. You catch fragments of a whispered account from one observer, horrified yet captivated. He displayed them as one with jewels set them against each other made, them dance until their dignity was gone, and then took his pick as though choosing a weapon of war. The irony is suffocating. Byzantium painted itself as the Holy Empire, the shield of Christendom. Yet within these walls, sanctity drowned in wine, and holiness was mocked by lust. For the emperor, the harem was more than pleasure. It was theater. Each slave was a political symbol. A Persian concubine meant victory over the east, a Slavic maiden proof of dominion across the northern frontiers. Their bodies were trophies, their subjugation a living declaration of conquest. And when the night ended, silence fell. The laughter was gone, the music extinguished. Only whispers remained, traded in the dark alliances forged, promises sealed, secrets bound by shared shame. You stand in the empty chamber now, the smell of wine and sweat still clinging to the air. The jewels glimmer faintly in the candle stubs. And you realize that what you have witnessed is not indulgence. It is domination. It is politics, dressed in silk and dripping in perfume. The Byzantines may not have left their harems carved into history like the Ottomans did, but behind the gilded doors of Constantinople, the empire's Golden Harem thrived in secrecy, in sin, and in silence. The roar hits you before you even see the arena. A tidal wave of voices, tens of thousands of throats, echoing through the marble colonnades of the hippodrome. You step inside, and the sight freezes your breath. On the sand below, a man is dragged forward by soldiers. His wrists are bound, his back bent from the blows he has already taken. But it is not the chains that humiliate him. It is his nakedness. This man was once a general, his name spoken with fear. Now, stripped bare, he is nothing more than a spectacle. The crowd erupts. Some laugh, others jeer, a few spit. You can almost taste the cruelty in the air salt, sweat, and wine mixing with the hot stench of bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. This is no battlefield, no court of law. This is punishment by exposure. In Byzantium, to strip a man was to strip him of his honor, his legacy, his very humanity. Historians like Psellos whisper of emperors who mastered this theater of shame. Rivals were not only defeated, they were broken in front of the people. Some were paraded on donkeys, their heads shaved, their bodies mocked. Others endured far worse. Rumors tell of captives forced into acts so degrading they blurred the line between punishment and erotic cruelty. You hear one such account. A chronicler describes a fallen official brought before the court. They clothed him in women-esque garments, painted his face, and made him dance before the banquet as though he were a whore. The laughter was thunderous. And yet beneath the laughter lay something darker, the perverse delight of turning power into humiliation, of using sex as a weapon sharper than any blade. The hippodrome was not the only stage. Behind the gilded walls of the palace, punishment could take even stranger forms. Whispers tell of ritualized orgies, not for pleasure, but for domination. Prisoners were stripped and forced to perform before courtiers, their dignity dismantled piece by piece. To resist was useless. To submit was worse. Every glance, every mocking cheer, was a reminder that power in Byzantium did not simply kill, it degraded. You stand now in one of those chambers. The walls are close, heavy with the smell of incense that cannot mask the sour stench of fear. Torches flicker against mosaics of saints, their serene faces watching silently as prisoners are brought forward. The contrast is unbearable. Holiness above, humiliation below. A eunuch raises his hand, and the ritual begins. Clothes are torn away, skin bared to the torchlight. The act of stripping is slow, ceremonial, part punishment, part performance. The audience does not look away. In this moment, you realize shame is more effective than execution. Death ends a man. Humiliation lingers forever. The Byzantines understood this better than most. They did not always kill their rivals. They paraded them. They mocked them. They hollowed them out until they were empty shells, living reminders of imperial power. A naked body in chains spoke louder than a severed head. The crowd as cheers fade in your ears as you imagine what it must feel like to be stripped, to be jeered at, to feel your life's victories turned into a stage play of disgrace. In Byzantium, sex and punishment were not opposites. They were entwined, each feeding the other, each transforming the human body into a canvas of shame. You walk away from the hippodrome, but the echoes follow. Laughter, mocking, cruel, endless. You realize now, the empire's greatest weapon was not the sword, nor the cross, but humiliation itself. You kneel in the chapel. The stone is cold against your knees, and the air is thick with incense. Candles flicker in golden holders, their flames bending in the draught like trembling confessions. Monks chant in the distance, their voices echoing against vaulted arches. At first, it feels holy, pure, eternal. But listen closely. Beneath the hymns is another sound, a softer rhythm. Whispers. The faint scrape of robes shifting. Flesh against flesh in the shadows. In Byzantium, monasteries were not always fortresses of purity. They were extensions of the palace itself, entangled in politics, wealth, and temptation. Behind their walls, the line between holiness and desire blurred. Priests who preached chastity by day were accused of indulgence by night. Nuns, cloistered away from the world, found comfort not only in prayer but in secret embraces. One chronicler dares to write, their prayers ended in kisses, their vigils in caresses. The words are half accusation, half revelation. You glance toward the altar. There, two figures linger after the prayers are done. Their heads bowed, their lips moving silently, not in psalms, but in confession of a different kind. They speak of spiritual marriage, a secret vow whispered in Byzantine cloisters. To the outside world, it was a bond of souls. But within, it was a bond of bodies. A sanctioned excuse for desire dressed in holy language. The ritual was strange. A man and woman would kneel before the cross, vow themselves to purity, yet immediately embrace, as if heaven itself blessed their union of flesh. Some called it divine. Others called it blasphemy. Either way, it spread. You imagine it now. A chapel at midnight. Doors barred, candles burning low. The sisters and brothers gather, robes loose, eyes heavy with hunger. Hymns begin, but soon the melody falters. The chanting becomes a moan. The prayer becomes a touch. And in the wavering light, holiness collapses into desire. The palace knew. The emperors knew. And often they tolerated it. Sometimes they even encouraged it. A monk entangled in sin could be controlled, blackmailed, bent into loyalty. A nun bound by secret desire could be persuaded to serve political ends. Sin was not always punished, it was harnessed. Michael Psellos, the Byzantine historian, whispers of these scandals with careful words. He describes abbots who lived in luxury, priests with companions in their cells, nuns who bore children and passed them off as miracles. The chronicles accuse, yet they also protect, for the empire itself benefited from this convenient corruption. And so, religion became another mask. Holiness by day, desire by night. The monastery walls did not seal away temptation. They concealed it, nurtured it, made it thrive. You breathe in the incense again. It clogs your lungs, sweet and heavy, almost suffocating. The more you inhale, the more the chapel seems to close in on you. Saints stare down from painted icons, their eyes unblinking, as if they have witnessed every forbidden's touch, every secret vow. For a moment, you wonder, was this sin, or was it survival? Was it lust, or simply the human heart refusing to be caged by prayer? But then you remember, in Byzantium, holiness and sin were never enemies. They were lovers, bound together in the same ritual embrace. And you leave the chapel with that realization burning in your mind. The empire's faith was not pure devotion. It was desire dressed in robes of gold. You sit at the emperor's table. The hall glitters with gold and laughter. Musicians pluck their strings. Servants pour endless streams of red wine, and torches throw shadows across jeweled walls. The feast is alive, but beneath the music there is something sharper, something waiting. A goblet is placed in your hand, warm, heavy, and filled to the brim. You raise it, smiling at the rival across from you. His eyes meet yours for a brief second, confident, mocking. He drinks deeply, but then he falters. His lips darken. His breath catches. The music does not stop, yet suddenly, all you can hear is his choking. In Byzantium, desire was never safe. Love in the palace was rarely pure, it was poisoned. Empresses, concubines, and courtiers turned intimacy into a weapon. Betrayal was punished not with words, but with venom slipped into a goblet, or a powder dusted onto bread. Lovers who wandered into another's arms often never left the bedchamber alive. The chronicler Michael Psellos hints at women of the court who kept herbs of power hidden in their chambers. Some were love potions, meant to inflame a passion. Others were aphrodisiacs laced with deadly roots. A kiss could ignite desire, or burn through the body like fire. You imagine the scene. A lover whispers over a chalice, swearing devotion. A moment later, the wine burns bitter on the tongue. The body trembles, desire replaced with terror. By dawn, the sheets are stained not with passion, but with death. The empresses themselves were whispered to be the most dangerous. Some historians accuse Theodora, wife of Justinian, of using lovers as pawns, rewarding loyalty with pleasure, punishing betrayal with silence. Or poison. Whether true or not, the whispers alone gave her power. Who would dare cross a woman who might lace your cup with venom, then smile as you drained it? The palace was a labyrinth, its corridors filled with both ecstasy and execution. Behind gilded doors, intimacy became a game of survival. Every glance, every caress carried risk. Was the perfume sprinkled on your pillow meant to arouse or to smother your breath forever? You breathe in the feast around you now. Roasted meat, honeyed wine, incense burning thick. But hidden beneath these scents, something else lingers: bitter almond, the unmistakable ghost of poison. And the more you inhale, the more you realize Byzantium's passion was not love, but calculation. Every affair was an alliance, every embrace a bargain. And when the bargain ended, so did the lover. One Byzantine manual of medicine describes herbs that stir the flesh when swallowed, while others extinguish the spirit in silence. The same potion that bound two bodies in desire could, with a single adjustment, turn the body cold. You remember the rival across the table. His goblet lies overturned, wine pooling like blood. His lips are blue now, his eyes wide, staring into nothing. Yet the feast continues. Laughter roars, goblets clink, and no one dares to speak of his sudden silence. This was Byzantium's truth. In the empire of gold and crosses, love was never innocent. It was lethal. And as you lower your own cup, still untouched, you cannot help but wonder whose lips will darken next. You step beyond the velvet curtains, into the emperor's private chamber. The air is heavy thick with incense, spiced wine, and something darker. Icons of Christ hang from the walls, their painted eyes glaring down, but here, the sacred and the profane bleed together. Candles flicker against the gold leaf halos, their light falling on a sight that makes you shiver. Masked courtesans kneel in silence. Their bodies are draped in silk, their faces hidden behind painted visages of saints and angels. Their lips do not pray. They wait. And then the emperor appears. Draped in imperial purple, jeweled crown upon his head, he raises a goblet high. The chalice gleams in the candlelight. You expect a prayer, a blessing, but instead, he whispers something else. Words twisted from scripture, half holy, half profane. The ritual begins. Chroniclers like Procopius hinted at such spectacles. Whispers of emperors staging ceremonies where lust became a form of worship. For some rulers, power over bodies was as important as power over armies. To command desire was to command devotion. You watch as the masked women rise, moving in practiced unison. The chamber transforms into a theater, every gesture calculated, every embrace symbolic. To outsiders, these acts might seem obscene. But here, they are performance, ritual, power made flesh. Behold the emperor, one courtier is said to have declared, master of both spirit and flesh. But mastery is an illusion. The emperor's eyes reveal something else, hunger. Addiction. He drinks deeply from the chalice again, his hand trembling as if without this rite, he would unravel. Imagine it, the holiest icons staring down as bodies entwine beneath them. A parody of prayer, where moans replace hymns, and the emperor stands at the center, both priest and addict, worshipped and enslaved. Some chroniclers dared to suggest masked orgies where nobles, priests, and courtesans mingled, their identities hidden, their loyalty tested. To share in the emperor's ritual was both privilege and peril. A single glance, a misplaced gesture, could end a life. Yet to refuse was worse, an insult to the emperor's divine desire. You could almost hear it now. The clash of censers swinging, the thick chant of prayers rising, twisted with gasps of pleasure. And in the center, the emperor half king, half captive of his own hunger. His chamber is no mere bedroom. It is battlefield and throne alike. Here, enemies are subdued not by sword, but by seduction. Allies are bound not by treaties, but by flesh. Every caress is a bargain. Every climax, a conquest. Yet beneath the gold and ritual, the emperor is as trapped as anyone. Chroniclers wrote of rulers so consumed by these secret rites that governance withered. Decisions delayed, wars lost, desire devouring empire. You watch as the ritual crescendos. The emperor collapses back onto his bed, sweat glistening like oil on his brow. The courtesans bow low, their masks staring blankly. The chamber falls silent, save for the faint crackle of candles. For all his power, the emperor looks small now, a man consumed. a man enslaved by what he craved most. And as you turn away, you realize the palace's greatest secret. The empire was ruled not from the throne room, but from this chamber where power, lust, and faith twisted into one. And the emperor himself? He was never master of desire. He was its prisoner. You step out of the palace at dawn. The city is waking. Priests chant their hymns as though the night never happened. The incense still burns, curling lazily into the morning air. Sunlight spills across the mosaics, gilded saints gleaming as if untouched by shadow. To the world, Byzantium looks eternal, holy, unshakable, chosen by God. But you know better. Behind those golden walls, you have glimpsed its hidden art. Not sanctity, but lust. Not divine order, but humiliation, secrets, and rituals whispered behind locked doors. Here, power was not only written in law or scripture, it was carved onto bodies, bought with shame, and sealed in chambers where no prayer could wash it clean. And that was Byzantium's curse. The empire did not crumble only from armies at its gates, nor from the clash of crusaders and Ottomans. It rotted first from within, from poisoned goblets shared at banquets, from beds where power turned into humiliation, from emperors consumed by their own hunger, and courtiers who learned that betrayal was the only true currency of survival. You walk further, the palace shrinking behind you. Its domes still glitter like heaven itself. But you know that beneath every jewel, every candle, every painted halo, there lies a darker truth, an empire undone by its own desires. And then a thought grips you, heavier than any history book could teach. If the holiest empire on earth hid such corruption, what of today? Behind modern palaces, parliaments, and gilded halls of power, how many secrets remain locked away, waiting to be uncovered? The answer, perhaps, is closer than you think.